Well, what I wanted to talk about today is one of the most important tools that I have in my toolbox, and that's my company's ability to do upfront underwriting on a buyer's pre-approval.
Upfront underwriting. Okay, so real quick, Matt, can you explain traditional underwriting of a mortgage and then upfront underwriting?
So traditional, the majority of most banks that I know of, they pre-approve a buyer. A loan officer meets with a customer,
Okay.
and they go through the pre-approval process.
Yep.
They put the data into the computer, and
Okay.
then they run the data through what they call a desktop underwriter. It's an automated system
Okay.
that spits out what they call an approval. So if you can get a DU approval, if a customer can get a DU approval after applying with a loan officer, that loan officer then traditionally gives a pre-approval letter out, and they hand that out to the customer, and the customer gives it to whoever they may or may not be working with.
Sure.
The realtor, and the realtor uses that to put an offer in on a property.
What's the time frame of that normal process?
If a customer calls me and I can get the data in, it typically takes about an hour if I can have a full conversation within that hour.
Let's say if somebody goes to a different, all right, so a traditional bank, a traditional mortgage company, which is 95% of them out there, if they go there and they do the normal underwriting process, you're looking at about 45 to 60 days to close, correct?
So yes, typically they look at a 45 to 60 day process to close, because what happens is you take that pre-approval letter that a loan officer sends out to the customer, and then they go and put an offer in on a house, and then all the paperwork starts.
Yep.
The process starts. It takes a long time to get the underwriter's approval on the entire situation, because you're under contract, and you have to do all the documentation to verify the data that you put into the computer.
Okay.
So the way that Movement Mortgage does it is that we get all the homework done before they go into contract.
All front loaded.
All front loaded. It's super front loaded. So that way, when they go into contract, the only things that are missing are the items pertaining to the particular house.
The appraisal.
So the appraisal.
Yep.
The title work.
Okay.
The homeowner's insurance policy.
Okay.
And the deposit that they put down on the house.
Easy breezy stuff.
It's all things that we can do in a 30 days time, no problem. And sometimes 15 days.
I've seen it. We're doing one right now.
Right now, we're going to close on 14 days.
Absolutely.
In my opinion, no buyer should be signing a contract unless they're as prepared as possible to sign that contract.
Yeah.
And that's where Movement Mortgage really comes into play, is that we do as much preparation and education so that when a buyer signs a contract to close on a particular day, they are as prepared as possible to sign that document.
Absolutely. Definitely.
Which is binding. You have deposits at risk. You have time frames that you have to be considered, that have to be considered. You can it's definitely very powerful, because what happens is that customer turns into as close to a cash buyer as possible.
Okay.
So when you're a buyer's agent and you have a customer that's been already underwritten with an address that's to be determined, you can really get aggressive with the negotiations and timetables about how and when they can close.
That makes a lot of sense.
And sometimes sellers are in a position that they have to close as soon as possible, because they have to be out and into their next situation as quick as possible. So they might get a highest and best, but if that highest and best can't close in a reasonable time, that makes them available to do whatever they need to do in the future, then they might consider a second option because they can close faster. Or even when the situation when you are highest and best and you can close faster, it just turns out to be very, very good business. And
leverage.
It's
leverage. So a lot of people don't know this, that highest and best offers in a bid situation aren't always bottom line price. Now, let's just say if somebody offers, say, $355 on a property and they can close in 60 days, and your client offers $350, which is $5,000 less, and they can close in 15 days. Well, do the math. The overhead that home costs.
Exactly.
It doesn't make sense to keep on going and to risk that this buyer with the 60-day closing could fall through. So you might as well go with this buyer who's fully approved for a mortgage in 14 days if the property is vacant, if that works for you, or maybe push it back to a 30-day closing, get George Metz in there, help you move out or whatever.
Correct.
And get going, just so you can lock up that better qualified buyer. It makes a ton of sense.
It makes a ton of sense. I mean, typically it's a 30-day process. If we have a 30-day, if we can have 30 days to get to a closing table,
yeah,
my process is very, very comfortable for everybody that gets involved, because I mean 30 days is more than enough time to get everything done. So if we can have 30 days to get the under contract, the appraisal order, the title back, homeowners insurance, get all the funds prepared and displayed to the customer before the closing tables, it makes everything just really, really relaxed. And then there's situations where you're under a rush and you're a gun and you need to get it done in 15 days, and I've done a bunch of those. So either way, if it's 30 or 15, getting the upfront underwriting done before they go into contract, and getting the underwriter who is the only person in a mortgage company that can fully approve somebody or fully deny somebody is that underwriter. So if we can get them to make a decision before they go into contract on a house, it just brings a huge glacier right out of the way of this whole buying process.
It's a big process too, buying a home. So that's great. Matt, if one other thing too that people have questions all the time, what do I need? What documentation do I need to get approved for a mortgage?
So before I sit down with the customer, I have most of the time I talk to them on the phone. I have a discovery meeting, and depending on what their current financial portfolio looks like, I cater my checklist according to the customer.
Yep.
But typically, if you're a W-2 employee, you either have a salary or if you work on an hourly wage, I would need a 2-year documentation of that job.
Okay.
And if you've changed jobs in the past within that 2-year period, then we need to document both jobs.
Okay.
And see what happened before and then what happened after.
Okay.
So typically it's the last 24 months. We need to take a look at what you did for work. You would look at the pay stubs for the last 30 days. What money you're going to use for a down payment. So your last 2 months bank statements, sourcing where that money is.
Okay.
Your ID. And then everybody else has got their specialties items that we have to consider. So whatever that specialty item is, we would talk about it, and then whatever the appropriate documentation is to verify that, whatever that situation is, divorces, foreclosures, bankruptcies,
self-employment,
all of it. Yeah, we will cater to that specialty that is particular to that particular buyer. And then we sit down and we have the underwriter take a look at all of it, and if everything pans out, we get that approval out, and now it's time to go buy a house.
It's a process that makes so much sense. I don't know why everybody doesn't do front-loaded underwriting and gets you fully approved, again, right up front. That's perfect. Matthew Bates with Movement Mortgage. You can contact him. Matt, how do they reach you?
My cell phone number is 401-266-4416.
Okay, great. And you can go to theroundtableradio.com. Again, theroundtableradio.com. Go under the expert contributor section. Check Matt out. You can see all of his contact information. You can look his company up. They're, I believe, what are you, number 2 lender in the country for
purchases.
In purchases.
Yeah.
This is what they do. They do home purchases all around the country. Movement's been here in the Providence market, working very, very well for our market, and you guys have seen some explosive growth here. I mean, every agent I turn around seems to be working with Movement.
We try really hard.
Which is great. I see your name all over the place, too.
It's thanks
Big
to you,
guy.
brother.